Tutorial bosses. They are really important to a game, since they teach players, well, can you guess what they teach? Yep, they teach players how to play the game. And in the game I'm going to talk about, it determines whether a player keeps playing the game or just clicks the refund button. That game is Dark Souls 3. Almost all of the Dark Souls games have good tutorial bosses. Asylum Demon from Dark Souls 1 taught players how to take advantage of having the high ground alongside teaching them how to fight a massive demon boss. Because oh, believe me, this isn't the last time you will be fighting a demon in this game. Dark Souls 2? I haven't played Dark Souls 2, so sorry guys. And we arrive at Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3's tutorial boss is Iudex Gundyr. Before I talk about the boss, I want to talk about the tutorial area, Cemetery of Ash. Cemetery of Ash is a good tutorial area. Like all Dark Souls games, it teaches you how you can play via messages on the floor. Dark Souls 3 also adds a new mechanic to the Dark Souls series, called focus points, or FP for short, which is basically mana. So now casting spells consumes both stamina and FP. If you're wondering why I'm talking about this mechanic, it's because you have to pick up something called an Ashen Estus Flask from a corpse in the Cemetery of Ash, which is essential if you ever want to do anything related to FP, since it basically works like an Estus Flask, but instead of giving you health, it gives you FP. So it's crucial and you have to pick it up unless you are me in my first Dark Souls 3 playthrough, in which I somehow managed to miss it entirely until I had progressed to the Cathedral of the Deep. Going back to the Cemetery of Ash, you progress further fighting normal enemies. Here, the game teaches a beginner player something really important. Exploration is crucial. If you explore this area, you can find 2 soul items which can be consumed to get souls. 1 Titanite shard which is used to upgrade weapons. A crystal lizard enemy which, if you can defeat it, drops a Titanite scale which is another item used for upgrading weapons. And finally, 5 fire bombs which will be important later. This area is pretty small, so players can get to the boss incredibly easily. In the middle of the boss arena is the boss, Iudex Gundyr. Iudex Gundyr doesn't get activated until you pull out the coiled sword. Now, this splits the player base into 2. One side waits for Gundyr to get up before fighting him, and the other side, well, always chooses Mercenary as their starting class with the gift as Black Firebomb, and attacks Gundyr while he is getting up to remove 10% of his health bar before the boss fight has even started. Here I'm going to talk about why he is such a great tutorial boss. Since Dark Souls 3 is so different from Dark Souls 1 in terms of gameplay, it needed a boss to teach returning players and new players of that gameplay difference. Dark Souls 3 came out in the after Bloodborne era of FromSoft, meaning that the gameplay is a lot faster. Of course, since the gameplay is faster, the game needed a tutorial boss that could convey the message of move fast or parry to new players. Gundyr is the perfect boss for this. All of his halberd attacks are easily parryable, and due to this, the boss teaches new players of the parrying mechanic, without making it incredibly hard for them. If the players don't want to parry, or they just can't parry the boss's attacks, they have to dodge the attacks. Here players will learn that rolling away isn't exactly the best option, since it leaves them with little time to counterattack due to the game's faster speed. So it teaches players to roll towards the attack, which will leave players with enough time to damage the boss. On top of that, Gundyr's attack combos often have a small window in between attacks, meaning that if the player tries to roll spam, the boss's attack will catch the player after the roll and damage them. This teaches new players, not returning players, to not roll spam and to conserve their stamina. After the boss reaches Half-Elf, it will enter its second phase. Here is where the firebomb becomes important. In its second phase, Gundyr becomes weak to fire attacks, meaning that if the player searches the area for the firebombs, they can damage the boss easily. This also teaches new players that they can find items to help them against the boss fight before the boss. For example, you can find gold pine resin in the High Wall of Lothric area, which contains the boss Wart of the Boreal Valley. As you might have guessed, Wart is weak to lightning attacks, which the gold pine resin provides, so searching the area that boss is located in is a smart move. One last, less important reason I want to give for the boss being one of the best tutorial bosses is the lore. I know that it isn't that important since it doesn't affect the gameplay, but I'm a huge fan of the Dark Souls lore, so I still wanted to mention it. Basically, the most accepted theory is, since time is convoluted, Iudex Gundyr is from a time where he arrived at Firelink Shrine too late and saw that the flame was already extinguished, his firekeeper had been killed, and worst of all, the Age of Darkness had begun. He is defeated by an unknown warrior, which is likely us, but I don't want to give major spoilers for the game, even though it has been out for 6 years. Gundyr is stabbed with the coiled sword, which forces him to remain there. Gundyr remains there, judging new unkindled to see if they are strong enough to actually succeed where he had failed. That's basically his lore, which conveys the game's main theme of the world decaying incredibly well. Thanks for watching. If you think there's a better tutorial boss, I would like to hear what you think about it. And I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe, but I won't force you to. Goodbye.